Welcome to Fireside Giants. My name is Alex, and my co-host here, Your Excellence, Anthony Rivardo, back at it with us for another New York Giants video, my friends. It's been a while. He's taking a little break, but he's back. We're ready to talk New York Giants football and some really good draft prospects. We're focusing today on the linebackers, from Zavin Collins to Nick Bolton to Micah Parsons to Jamin Davis. There's a lot of really, really great linebackers in this draft, and the Giants could look to find that guy next to Blake Martinez. So I'm pretty excited to talk about these linebackers, Anthony. We've been watching a lot of film. At least I have today. I know Anthony has been as well. So we have some good information for you guys, kind of what these prospects would bring to the table if they fit our scheme, what their strengths and weaknesses are. So I'm pretty excited about that, Anthony. So how you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing all right. I'm happy to be back. I miss being on the show, so I'm very happy to be back here on the show and talking some football. I love football. It's a great escape from the world. And so, over this past week while I was away, I did find solace in watching film. I watched a lot of film. I really dove deep into the wide receiver class. I got through like 10 of them. My board for the wide receivers is pretty much set. There's a few more guys I want to watch before I finalize it, but I think it's a really deep wide receiver class. But then I started diving into the linebackers, and I realized it's pretty deep at linebacker as well. The first and second round have quite a few talents worthy of being selected in those rounds this year. And we're going to dive into a few of those names. Zavin Collins, Jamin Davis, and then, of course, the top two. You got Micah Parsons, you got JOK. It's a really solid class, and we were just talking about this before we started recording. It's a very deep, solid class in pretty much every position of need for the Giants except for edge rusher. That one's pretty thin, but guard, linebacker, receiver, even corner in a way, very deep for the Giants. I think the Giants are set up in a position here to have a really solid draft this offseason. That would be back-to-back years that they would have a solid draft. And then, paired with the back-to-back great free agency periods they had, plus you're hoping that these guys take the next step, these young guys on the roster, you're looking at potentially the Giants taking a huge step forward, being a solid playoff team in 2021. That's the goal. That's my expectation for them. And I'm really excited and very excited to dive into this linebacker class. I'm very intrigued by it.
Yeah, if the Giants knock this draft out of the park, it's going to put them in a really great spot moving forward. Because we know we got Kenny Golladay, we know we got Adoree Jackson. That's a plug at CB2 and wide receiver 1. And as Anthony mentioned, you have a really deep wide receiver class this year. So you don't necessarily need to go with a wide receiver at 11, whether it's Devonta Smith, Jalen Waddle. Of course, we'd love to have them. But of course, you obviously know if Daniel Jones doesn't have time in the pocket, it doesn't matter who his playmakers are. I talked a little bit about, last episode, how the offense is going to change the schematics, I think, in terms of being a more vertical-based offense and using those fast guys and big bodies on the outside in Kenny Golladay, John Ross, Darius Leonard, pushing the field vertically and forcing defenses to play two deep safeties, and opening up the field for Saquon Barkley, opening better mismatches for the offensive line against less pass rushers. That's kind of the goal here. So I'm excited to talk about, the defensive side of the ball and what these linebackers bring. And I want to start off with Micah Parsons because we'll go from the top linebackers and then back in the first round. Micah Parsons obviously is one of the most intriguing defenders, if not the best defender in this draft. I think that there's going to be a couple quarterbacks off the board, could be up to 5 in the first 10 picks, and a guy like Micah Parsons could be there at 11 for the Giants. And what he represents for our defense is what a lot of teams would look at Micah Parsons and say he's a foundational piece. He's a rock. He's a guy you build around. Adding Micah Parsons to a defense that's already expected to be a top 7, top 5 unit in points allowed per game would be tremendous. Pairing him with Blake Martinez, not only is he a long-term solution at middle linebacker to replace Blake Martinez one day if his contract expires, if we don't keep him around for whatever reason, but he's also capable of being an outside linebacker and really rushing the passer adequately, and that's what I really like about him. He has refined pass rush moves. He's not going to set the edge for you. He's not like an edge rusher, but I would line him up sporadically as an outside linebacker and let him rush the passer and let him use his run blocking skill, run stopping skills. Anthony, what do you think about Micah Parsons though?
Alex, you know me, I'm kind of head over heels for Micah Parsons at this point. The more and more I watch him, the more and more I study him, I really do think he's head and shoulders above the rest of the defenders in this class. I think he is the best defender in this class. I think, I remember last offseason, last year around this time, everyone was saying wait for next year to draft that linebacker. Don't go Isaiah Simmons. Wait till next year. There's this guy coming out. He's going to be a top 5 lock, top 3 talent in the draft for sure. Micah Parsons should be a top 3 pick next year. Then everyone forgot about him because he opted out, and we watched a full season, 2020, with no Micah Parsons on the field. So everyone just forgot about him. Now we're in the draft process. Everyone's saying, maybe he's not the top 5 pick. He's got some rumors about him. I don't think he's worth taking at 11. not worth taking at 11. Last year, he was worth taking at 3. How is he not worth taking at 11 now? I don't understand what's happened with the narrative on Micah Parsons. If it's just based on the allegations that he has, that's fair. That's a fair criticism, fair concern. But it seems like most people already moved on from that, and it's been put to rest. Most NFL scouts, I'm saying, have moved on from that and don't see it as a problem anymore. So I don't understand why his draft stock and his public perception has fallen so much. Like, I remember last year, I don't even remember anybody mentioning this guy coming out next season, Rashawn Slater, but now everyone thinks he's a better prospect than Micah Parsons, and I don't know where that came from, because last year all I heard was Micah Parsons is the next best linebacker prospect since Luke Kuechly. Think about Luke Kuechly. First ballot Hall of Fame lock. He was the best linebacker of that generation, him and Bobby Wagner in their primes. If you're talking about getting that level of player in their prime with Micah Parsons, you're talking about getting... I mean, Luke Kuechly was the best defender in the NFL when he was in his prime. You're talking about getting one of the best defenders in the NFL. Think about what that can do for your team. Think about what that can do for your defense when you've already got a top 10 defense. And then you just get... I mean, Micah Parsons, what I see from him, he's a guy who fits perfectly to a T in the Giants scheme. You know, like, I love Parsons. I'm going to watch him wherever he goes. I'm going to root him on because I think he's great. Unless he goes to a division rival, then he's dead to me, right? But till then, I'm going to root him on, and I think that he's phenomenal. But when I look at which teams fit Parsons the best, I think the Broncos are pretty solid because I think he moves over to the edge because they know how to handle Von Miller, and Von Miller and him have very similar athletic builds and athletic testing results, right? But when you look at an off-ball linebacker with the ability to pass rush the way that Micah Parsons can, because he's a phenomenal pass rusher, but then you look at Patrick Graham's defensive scheme, right, where you had... When we did the film breakdown against Seattle, right, when the Giants whooped Seattle, we saw Blake Martinez playing off-ball linebacker, as he usually does, then going over to the edge and playing the contain and running these stunts. And I saw Tay Crowder do that a lot too, run these stunts to the edge and pass rush. Now, these are off-ball linebackers pass rushing. That's not usually their skill set, but Graham was doing that because of the speed and the ability to contain a scrambling quarterback on the edge. And that was the key to beating Seattle. Now you take a guy, off-ball linebacker, Micah Parsons, who has the ability to go around the edge and actually win down to down and beat up left tackles and be a legitimate edge rusher, because he could be an NFL edge rusher, but he's also just got the skills in the run game to be a dominant off-ball linebacker. For Patrick Graham's scheme, that is perfect. That's exactly what you need. They have a great run defender in Blake Martinez, but to get another one next to him, plus just the athleticism of Micah Parsons, plus his ability to rush off the edge, you're talking about the perfect scheme fit. Like, that's why I'm just so locked in on Micah Parsons. If he's there at 11, it has to be the pick, in my opinion. Unless you're very concerned about the off-the-field stuff, which personally I am not. He was 17, 18. He's 21 with a kid now. I assume he's matured since then and learned some things. He's a dominant prospect. He is an elite prospect, and I absolutely believe that he should be a top 5 pick in this year's draft. There's just a lot of positional value conversations to have, but head and shoulders above the rest of the defenders in this class, let alone linebackers. I'm head over heels for Micah Parsons. Love him as a prospect. Think he would be more than a home run. He would be out of the park grand slam for the Giants if they selected him at 11.
Yeah, and you know what? I am pretty confused at where the Giants are going to go in this draft because I hear different things every day. You know, on one day it's Matt Lombardo saying, oh, the Giants are enamored by Devonta Smith. And the next day is they're allocating tons of resources towards the edge rusher and looking at edge rushers and evaluating those talents. And then it's, we like Patrick Surtain from Jordan Raanan. They are putting out so many smoke screens and don't get fooled by the media telling you any crap. It could be Devonta Smith. It could be Patrick Surtain. But I'll tell you what, I don't really think anybody actually knows what's going on. I think Joe Judge knows, but the Alabama connection is a pretty good one to rely on. He does like those Alabama players. So if Devonta Smith is on the board, I wouldn't be surprised if they did take him. But I'll tell you this, with Micah Parsons, he is one of the best pursuit linebackers I've ever seen. He is so fast at tracking down running backs, especially in the backfield. He's incredible. You remember Ryan Connolly when he used to just burst through those gaps and just get into the backfield? He has that ability, but he makes the tackle, and he blows people up. He doesn't only make the tackle, but he forces turnovers, forced fumbles. He hits like a freaking truck. And the way he uses his leverage and his body fundamentally is incredible. I was just watching some film on him a couple hours ago, and one thing that I saw is when he gets into the gaps and offensive linemen go to try and block him, he lowers his shoulder, and he gives them his inside shoulder, and he basically just ducks right underneath of their blocks to shed them. And it's really incredible watching that fundamental trait that he has, that he's built up. He's really found ways to utilize his athleticism to beat bigger offensive linemen that are trying to get rid of him in those gaps, and those B gaps and C gaps. And he just ducks under them, and he just gets after running backs so aggressively. So I love that pursuit aspect of him.
I mean, that right there, you're talking about the bend, right? The flexibility, the bend. That's what, when you're evaluating edge rushers, number one thing you look for is elite bend around the edge. Micah Parsons has that, and he's an off-ball linebacker. He honestly could make the switch to edge rusher, be a stand-up outside linebacker in a 3-4 scheme, beat down left tackles play after play. He has that skill set. He's that good of a pass rusher. But he also has the off-ball linebacker skill set. Dude, he's incredible.
The guy just ran a 4.39.
Yeah,
like,
the 4.3. Yeah,
stupid.
4.39. His athleticism, his testing, his size, speed, length combination, plus that flexibility, that bend. All the things, he's literally just, the one knock on him, he doesn't have a lot of coverage experience, and he's not the best guy to put down in coverage. But the Giants don't really use their linebackers in coverage. They don't. That's why he's just a perfect scheme fit. He would play exactly to his strengths in the scheme. It would be phenomenal. I've seen him have good plays in coverage, but yeah, that is definitely his weakness, is the coverage skills. Giants really wouldn't be drafting him to be a coverage linebacker. They'd be drafting him to do all the things we just said, and he'd be a home run, man. I really want to see this happen. I know there's fans that don't, but I really want to see him fall to 11 and see the Giants take him.
Yeah, and my final comment on him will be, is there any way that he's actually worse than Tay Crowder or Devontae Downs in coverage? Because that's who we had next to Blake Martinez last year. Or David Mayo. Is there any way he's worse in coverage than them? No, of course not. Right. I don't think so.
The thing is, he doesn't have the coverage experience, and he doesn't have the technique, right? He hasn't learned. But he has that speed, agility, play recognition. He has all the things to be good in coverage. We just haven't seen him do it yet. Give him some NFL coaching. Give him Patrick Graham as his defensive coordinator. I think he would be a pretty good coverage linebacker at the next level if he has some time to develop into that role.
I agree. I think that's where he's headed. He's going to learn. The guy is so young. He's already mastered two attributes in terms of, or at least skill sets in terms of stopping the run very, very effectively and also rushing the passer as an stacked outside linebacker, whatever you want to use him as. The next thing is just pass coverage. He's like we're going to talk about a couple guys right now. Let's go on to Zavin Collins. Let's talk about him for a second, because he's a totally different prospect, but similar in ways. I think he's a big boy, very, very big. He's a heavy guy. Doesn't play as strong as he looks. I don't think he's a sideline-to-sideline linebacker personally. He's not very quick laterally. He's very, very good north and south. Like, he's a thumper. He can fill those gaps with his body. Anthony said before the podcast, he's not the most efficient tackler, but he won a ton of awards. He won the nation's best defender award. He's legit, but he's also capable of rushing the passer pretty adequately too. He has really very similar attributes to Micah Parsons, but Micah Parsons just is so athletically gifted that he's a better talent in my opinion. Zavin Collins, though, another guy, is something that I noticed when I was watching the film. He gets better as the game goes on. He settles into games and he starts to take over and he starts to make splash plays. He's a very clutch player and he's good at rushing off the edge. He can beat tackles occasionally. I do like him a lot, and I think he would be a great selection. Not at 11, personally. I think he's more of a 20s pick. I think all the linebackers, aside from JOK and Micah Parsons, are 20s. I think JOK could go between 10 and 20, and I think that Micah Parsons could go anywhere between 0 and 15.
Yeah, I think, I think Micah Parsons is a top 3 talent. I think that, you take into account the red flags, he's absolutely still a top 10 pick in my opinion. With JOK, I think, 10 to 20. The problem with JOK, right, he'll probably, once I finalize my grade on him and I really finish breaking down his film, I'm thinking he's probably going to have a grade that marks him around spot 15. He's probably going to be around the 15 overall pick. But the problem with him, he has this problem of size. We've never seen a linebacker of that size before who's been successful in the NFL. That's the problem with JOK. He's got that coverage ability. He's got that play recognition. He's superbly talented. We've just never seen someone that size at that position. And that's why a lot of people think he's a safety. A lot of people think he's going to move to safety, be the big, strong safety, be a nickel safety. And a lot of people don't really see him having the most successful career because of that. But a lot of people say if you get a really smart defensive coordinator that knows how to use him and needs a coverage linebacker, they're going to make him into a successful player because he's really smart and he's really agile and he's got all those traits. So I think he's a very polarizing player, but I think I agree with where you kind of have the the basis of like where these players belong, right? I think that, with JOK, I think that he's worthy of being a 15 to 25 pick. I think he's probably going to fall in that range. I think that with I think Zavin Collins is probably going to be in the same range to me, though, just because JOK would probably be higher if I didn't have the size concerns. But with Zavin Collins, I want to touch on him real quick. He's Micah Parsons light to me. And I just explained how I'm all in love with Micah Parsons, how I think he's a perfect scheme fit. Micah Parsons heavy, yeah. Micah Parsons light in terms of talent, heavy in terms of size. Micah Parsons, I just mentioned how he's such a great scheme fit because he's got that pass rushing ability. He reads the field really well, that stuff. With Zavin Collins, I see a lot of the similar traits. Zavin Collins, I think, actually might end up being an edge rusher in the NFL. Who I think Zavin Collins compares really perfectly to is Anthony Barr. Anthony Barr plays for the Minnesota Vikings. We all know him. He was pretty much a household name at one point in his career. He's a very talented player. Has had a very successful career and got paid a lot of money when he hit free agency, right? He's huge. He's humongous. He's a big 6'5" off-ball linebacker who had experience in college playing edge. Then he moved to off-ball linebacker. I think Zavin Collins is the same way. He's huge. He's gigantic. Stands in the middle field, tall, 6'5", very heavy. Not necessarily the most twitchy athlete, but I think he has enough speed. Things with him, I think when you look at him with his pass rushing, we just mentioned the bend and flexibility that Micah Parsons has. I think Zavin Collins has that as well. Maybe not to the same degree, but he has that. He's got the bend and flexibility. I think that's actually his best trait. He's such a great pass rushing off-ball linebacker. And again, that's why I think he fits so well in the Patrick Graham scheme. And then I think he's got really good vision and play recognition. I saw this play where there was a running back screen. He read it instantly, blew it up. The problem is he almost missed that tackle, and he missed quite a few tackles, and he almost misses a lot of tackles, gets bailed out because he's not going up against the greatest competition. Zavin Collins has a problem with over-pursuing. He's got poor pursuit angles, and I think that's why you think he doesn't necessarily have that sideline-to-sideline speed. I think he has the speed. I just think he doesn't run to the right spot any of the times that he's going sideline-to-sideline. I think he's just got bad pursuit angles, and he's not a good tackler. Another thing, he has all this size, but it doesn't seem like he has all this strength. Like, we know he has it, but he's not thumping people, really. Like, he is very downhill.
Looks like weight and not muscle.
Right, yeah, like he's just big, but he's not a punishing tackler. He's not getting off of blocks. I've seen tight ends handle him relatively well, like he's just not this punishing guy that you want him to be. He's very finesse, but he's in a power body, as you said to me in a text earlier today. Very finesse, not power, but he should be power based on that size. But I'm sure, gets in an NFL weight room, starts, hitting the bench press. I think he can definitely work on that. I think he can be a stronger player. This is a guy I think has a lot of potential, but I think specifically with the Giants is a perfect scheme fit. Say they trade back really far back into the 20s and he's sitting there, home run pick, like he really is that kind of home run prospect in terms of a scheme fit for the Giants. I like Zavin Collins a lot. We'll get into a couple more guys here, but Zavin Collins is my number 3 linebacker in the class right now. I've got JOK as 2, and of course Parsons is number 1 because I'm in love with that prospect. But JOK, I really like him. I'm interested to hear a little bit more your thoughts on him. I just think the size is definitely concerning, and I think the fact that a lot of people want him to switch to safety is also concerning. I wasn't concerned enough last year with Isaiah Simmons, who was probably a little bit larger than JOK is. And it seems like I should have been a little more concerned with that size scare and that safety ability. So, now I'm a little more scared about JOK this time around with one of these undersized linebacker prospects.
Yeah, I mean, just to touch on Collins, just one last little thing. I think he's good in every category, just not great, if that makes sense. I think Micah Parsons is great in 2 categories, and, we don't know much about his coverage ability, but Collins is decent in coverage. He's a good run defender, and he's good at rushing the passer as an off-ball linebacker. And I think that's what makes him so attractive, is that he has good traits in every single category. He's just not above average in any of them. But again, that's okay, because a well-rounded player is something to work off of. You can make a lot out of a well-rounded player. You can do a lot of versatile things with them, which is what Patrick Graham likes to do. But moving to JOK, like you said, a little undersized. He kind of looks like a strong safety in a way. He's a little bit faster, and he might make that transition, but the guy can hit, man. I saw one hit against Florida State where he absolutely blows up a running back in the flats. And I'm not what I think I like about him the most is because I think about pairing him with Blake Martinez, and I'm like, okay, now you have Blake Martinez, who's, had 151 tackles last year, is really, really great against the run. And now you have JOK, who can pretty much lock down anybody in coverage, whether it's a linebacker or a running back. He is so freaking good at coverage, and he knows how to high point balls. He gets his hands in there. Like, I really, really like him in coverage, and that's what stands out to me. But the only thing that concerns me is, is he big enough to fill those gaps? Is he big enough to handle an offensive lineman coming across his face and he can shed those blocks? Can he do that? If you can't do that at the NFL level, you shouldn't be playing linebacker. That's the concern, Is he really capable of being a run first linebacker? Like, you kind of need in that 3-4 scheme. You need those linebackers, both of them, to be able to handle the load in the run game. They're soaking up those bodies. So I think for the most part, JOK would be an awesome fit next to Blake Martinez as a coverage off-ball coverage linebacker. And especially what makes him enticing to me, Anthony, is how much teams are relying on tight ends in the NFL these days, like Travis Kelce, George Kittle. JOK would be awesome to have to face off against them, allowing guys like Jabril Peppers to get more creative, disguise those 3-4 coverages, whatnot. But that's kind of why I like him, because the tight ends in the NFL are getting better. They're getting faster. They're getting better as receivers, and having a linebacker like JOK to lock them down is really nice. That's kind of where I see JOK, but I do get a little worried that he can't handle the run game at the NFL level.
For me personally, I don't think he's a fit for the Giants. I really like JOK. I think we would have to change our scheme pretty drastically to fit him in there, though. Like, I would like him. I think he's a very talented player. But you're talking about a guy who's 6'1". Now, that's the 50th percentile for linebackers. You're talking about a guy who's 221 pounds. That's the 6th percentile for linebackers. That's, concerning. A 6th percentile in hands, 8.88 inches. I actually have measured my hands. They're larger than that. That's a 6th percentile for linebackers. That's concerning. He's small. 33-inch arm, 78th percentile, so he's a little lanky, I guess, compared to the rest of his size. But you're talking about a guy with elite agility. 3-cone, 6.8 seconds, 93rd percentile. Shuttle run, 415, 85th percentile. Explosiveness, 124-inch broad jump, 87%. Like, he's got the athletic testing. This is going to be interesting to you, I think. My pro comp for him, and I think this actually makes a lot of sense, is Jamal Adams. Now, Jamal Adams is a safety, but he's also a linebacker, right? That's kind of JOK. JOK, I don't think, is necessarily going to drop back deep like Jamal Adams, but I think in terms of playing in the box, being an undersized linebacker, Jamal Adams is 6'1", 213 pounds. JOK, 6'1", 221 pounds. Very similar size, weight, build. They've got a very similar frame, and they've got a very similar playing style in terms of their short area quickness and their coverage ability and their explosive hitting power, right? Like, he's an explosive hitter, as you just mentioned. And so is Jamal Adams. We know that very well. But we know Jamal Adams can read a field like better than any safety in the NFL. And we know that JOK read the field better than any linebacker in college last year. I think this is my best pro comp for him. He's a new breed of defender, as PFF mentions. He's versatile as all hell. He's just different. We haven't seen this before. I think if he was coming into the league as a safety, everyone would be like, this is the next Jamal Adams, I just think that's a very similar playing style. Jamal Adams plays a lot of linebacker. If you go check his stats on PFF, I guarantee you he has more snaps in the box than he does at deep safety. So he plays a lot of linebacker. I think ultimately, if he were to go, let's say JOK ended up on the Jets, right? Or if he ended up on, the Seahawks somehow. He's playing the Jamal Adams role, depending on what team he goes to. I think he ends up playing that Jamal Adams role. I think he ends up playing it really well. I think it's going to be an adjustment period for him. He's also not the best tackler. He missed 15.2% of his tackles this past season, but he's a thumper. He can hit really hard, and that also in itself, not making every tackle, but punishing you when you do, is a safety trait. And he can go toe-to-toe with wide receivers. He can guard wide receivers. So can Jamal Adams. I think that's my best comparison for him. I do think he is a safety in the NFL, but a box safety, and a true box safety who plays, in the box more than he plays deep. And he really is linebacker safety role. The dime defenses is where he thrives. The nickel defenses is where he thrives. That's what I see from JOK. I really like him as a prospect, but when you're looking at the New York Giants, and they already have their Jamal Adams archetype in Jabril Peppers to go down in the box, play linebacker, be an undersized thumper linebacker who can play in coverage, I think that's Jabril Peppers for the Giants. I don't necessarily think they need JOK to play some different role other than that, because I think that's where he thrives. You put him into a different role, I think you start to look at some troubling mistakes from him. So I think that's how I'm looking at JOK right now. Interested to see, if you agree the Jamal Adams comp, but for me right now, he's Jamal Adams kind of to a T, just maybe a little bit beefier and with more linebacker traits.
I completely agree. I've been trying to think of linebackers to compare him to for a couple of minutes now, and I can't think of one. There's nobody that really fits his mold. With more of a coverage oriented, he's better off as a defensive back. As that, I think he actually would be a good strong safety. I think that might be where he ends up, or this kind of money backer role. But I think strong safety is kind of where I see him translating the best, because the coverage ability, but he's also really good at running down running plays. He's really good on the back end. He can chase down runners. He's fast as hell. He's sideline to sideline. He's a multi-sport athlete. The guy is an absolute athletic masterpiece from the heavens. But he's not really a traditional linebacker that you want to be able to stop the run and make those plays. I think he's better off as a strong safety.
Yeah, and just to drive this point home even further, I'm going to give you the stats on Jamal Adams and where he played this season. Now, he played 874 snaps this year. 390 of them were in the box, and 189 of them were at slot corner. He only had 152 as a deep safety. So 390 in the box. Let's compare this to JOK. He had 212 in the box this last season with 331 at slot corner. Now, that's because it was a 4-3 defense, so he's playing slot corner, outside linebacker role. So, and that was something that happened with Isaiah Simmons as well. He got listed as slot cornerback most of the time. He was kind of playing box, but just outside the box. So he's a slot corner in a zone coverage defense. But that's pretty much exactly what you have seen Jamal Adams do in the Seattle defense. 390 snaps in the box, 189 at slot corner. So that's where you're seeing him line up the most. Inside and outside linebacker, I think that's exactly where JOK is lining up. I really like this comp that I came up with. I think it's pretty solid, and I really do think that's where I see JOK finding his role in the NFL, playing the Jamal Adams role.
Yeah, I think that's probably as close as you can get to a comparison at the NFL level. I really just don't think there's much to look at. I mean, I don't really know any linebackers that are that capable in coverage. So we'll see what happens with him. I think he's going to be a great player, but I think they're going to have to find a new role for him, which is interesting. So we'll see how that develops. But anyway, let's go on to the next two. We have two more linebackers I want to talk about. One of them is Nick Bolton, and the other one is Jamin Davis out of Kentucky. Nick Bolton, I watched a bunch of film of him today, and he's a thumper, man. He's like Devin Bush light. That's kind of how I viewed him. He's a sideline-to-sideline linebacker. He's a little bit smaller, more compact, but he can lay the hit, man. He hit this guy from Tennessee so hard. The guy looked like he was seeing stars. He found God after that hit, I swear. So it was crazy to see this little guy. He's like a ball of energy. He's like a spark plug, and he tracks down runners really well. He can track down guys from the backside if he's chasing them down, and he's decent in coverage. I like him a lot. He's, like I said, he's like a little ball of energy, and he just lays the hit, man. He delivers powerful hits that you don't expect from him because of his size. But I do like him. He's decent in coverage, as I mentioned before. I think he's a decent fit for the Giants. He's not really a pass rusher at all. He's more of a north-south. If you're going to send him, you're going to be doing kind of what the Giants did against Seattle, like Anthony mentioned. More of a contain. You're more like setting him north and south. You're not rushing him off the edge. He's a traditional Mike linebacker. He's calling the plays. He's stopping the run at the second level. He's quick, fast. He can get to the sidelines to make those plays. I think we already have that player in Blake Martinez personally, so I don't think the Giants would go Nick Bolton. But I do like him as a prospect, and I do think that he's capable of being a solid pro.
Yeah, I haven't watched a ton of Nick Bolton. I've watched a little bit. He's another guy in terms of height is a little undersized, 5'11". That's the 4th percentile for linebackers. 237, has a little more weight to him. Has really long arms, 31.88 inches. Really large hands, 10.38. That's a 96th percentile. And he ran a pretty solid 40-yard dash, 4.59 seconds, 75th percentile. That's very solid. What I like from him is his ability to shoot gaps and thump down, in the backfield, as you just mentioned. I saw that hit as well. He definitely gave that dude some sort of brain trauma. He absolutely blew that guy up on the goal line. In terms of his physicality, he has that. He is a linebacker, a true linebacker. But I gotta say, he's not your modern linebacker. He's not your coverage guy, and I do think that the Giants, in a way, kind of already have this playing style of linebacker. I think they've got this shoot the gaps, be the thumper guy, and I think that's Blake Martinez. His pro comparison from Pro Football Focus is really interesting. It's Navarro Bowman. Now, Navarro Bowman was one of the best linebackers in the NFL for the San Francisco 49ers. He was a phenomenal talent. So I think that's an interesting pro comp. Of course, these are playing style pro comps. It's not talent level pro comps. That's why, the Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah and then Jamal Adams, that's playing style pro comp. But I think that Nick Bolton's an interesting guy that I do want to look more into. You did pretty extensive research on him. I did some. I got to look into him more. But I think that he's a guy probably, I think that you mentioned it. You kind of hit it on the head. He's playing that Blake Martinez role in the NFL for the Giants scheme. And I think, the Giants don't necessarily need to take a early second or late first round pick on a guy playing this role that they already have a guy playing, if that makes sense. So I like Nick Bolton a lot. I just don't know if his fit is with the New York Giants. But I do think that his fit is going to be in the back end of the first round, and he's going to make a team very happy, whoever selects him.
I think so too. I think he's the thing is he's like an enforcer. If you're a hockey fan, you know that word. He's a guy that comes in and he makes plays, he hits people, and that's kind of what they expect from him. That's what a defense, expects from that Mike linebacker, to come downhill and fill those gaps. He's a single gap penetrator for the most part. Like, he's going to fill that B or C gap with force. But I do like his sideline to sideline speed. I think he'll be a great pro, but just not for the Giants because we already have a guy in that role at Mike linebacker on a couple years left on his deal. So don't think they'll go Nick Bolton. The next one and the last one that we're going to talk about today is Jamin Davis out of Kentucky. I think Jamin Davis is one of the most intriguing prospects at linebacker because of his upside. He is super rangy, super athletic. Everything about him screams NFL pro, screams Darius Leonard in from the Colts. He looks like Darius Leonard. He has that length, that ranginess. He's just a little raw, in my opinion. I saw that basically last year was his only year of true experience. That was the year he finally blew up. He didn't really get much playing time before that, and he, in the SEC. So I think, for the most part, he didn't really face off against the best talent, but he has the tools and traits to be a quality player. I think he'll be a mid-20s, late 20s pick, just because of the lack of immediate impact I think he's going to have. I think he needs a year to develop in the NFL because he's a little bit slow to figure out, what's going on in plays and misdirection with how creative offenses are getting these days. He's going to get lost in translation a little bit. He's going to need time to develop. So I think that for the most part, he has the athleticism, the tools, everything about him screams NFL pro. He's just not there mentally yet. He just doesn't have the fundamentals, the technique, all that stuff down. I think he's going to be a good, weak side linebacker and a 4-3 scheme. I don't know if he's going to be an outside, a 3-4. He can also translate to the outside. He can rush the passer. I think that he'll be a good weak side guy that can run down plays on strong side runs and pitches. He can come across the formation and make plays. He has that speed. I think he's going to be really good, but it has to be a good scheme fit.
I think that's a pretty good analysis. I love his sideline-to-sideline speed. I love his closing speed. I love his lateral agility. I think these are all the traits that he does really well. He's got great balance, flexibility as well. When I watched him, I saw a guy I think is a very early second-round pick. That's where I would really be comfortable taking him. And I want to emphasize sideline-to-sideline speed. I do really see that with him. I personally do see a little bit more vision out of him. I think that he does read the field pretty well. I think he's got pretty good play recognition. In the running game, I think in coverage he really struggles. I saw him get lost a couple of times and just didn't know who was behind him, who was around him, and just see the ball fly over his head. I think that was interesting. I don't think he really has those coverage skills. I don't think he has that coverage experience either. I don't think he was really asked to do so much in coverage. And he's also not a blitzer. We talked about some guys earlier, Micah Parsons, Zavin Collins. These guys are blitzers. Jamin Davis is not a blitzer. He's not going to make an impact as a pass rusher. But he does have that closing speed. He will get around on those outside zones, set the edge, and, attack a guy. He will make those plays outside that you need your weak side outside linebacker to do. So I think that's a really good way to sum him up. And yeah, I think this is a guy who has a lot of potential. You know, he's got all the tools in terms of his athleticism. He's pretty well sized. He's pretty well together put. And I think that he's got really good vision and play recognition in the running game. I just think he gets lost in coverage in the pass coverage game. And with a guy with that kind of speed, you want to see him develop in that way. You want to see him be a coverage linebacker because he has the speed to do it. He just doesn't have the, right now it doesn't seem like he has the mind to do it or the understanding of the game well enough. This is a one-year starter. He has 850 career snaps, so that makes sense. That's fine if he can't read the field that well in coverage. He'll get better, he'll grow, but that's why he's not a high first-round pick. He's a late first-round to early second-round pick for me. That's why, because you need to teach this guy how to play football more. He doesn't have enough experience, and, he's got all the physical tools and athleticism. You just got to teach him how to play the game a little bit better. And I think that he's really talented. I'm not a punishing tackler. He's a good tackler, though. He just kind of has this kind of lack of strength I see. But he's really got all the speed and athleticism. And I think that he's actually going to be a solid player. I think your comparison of Darius Leonard is really solid. A guy who, ultimately should have been a first-round pick. He was an all-pro. But he went day 2. He was a second-round pick. He had all that speed and ranginess. Didn't have that coverage experience and wasn't that thumper, but developed in a way. He developed really well. They got phenomenal coaching staff in Indianapolis. Helped him out a lot. I think that's what you can see with Jamin Davis. I really like him. Round 2 pick. I would love him, especially if he falls to the Giants. I think he could maybe be a fit for us in terms of, the way he chases people down. We don't have a coverage linebacker. We don't need one in our scheme, but, scheme can adapt. He would be a nice weapon for us. Maybe not, exactly the best scheme fit for the Giants, but he will fit someone's scheme. He will be a really solid player in the NFL. I like Jamin Davis a lot. I think he's a perfect day 2 pick for any team looking for a linebacker.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's going to have a good career. I think that he is capable of being really good. I think for the most part, though, my biggest concern is that he's good against the run. He's in the pass because he just doesn't have enough snaps, doesn't have enough action, and he as a pass rusher. So, in comparison to Zavin Collins, who's good in coverage, good against the run, good as a pass rusher, and then you have Micah Parsons, who's great against the run, great as a pass rusher, and in coverage. He doesn't reach the good category yet because there's not enough information. You're really basing a lot of this off of his athleticism. But Anthony, I'll let you rank the guys that we did. So Micah Parsons, Zavin Collins, JOK, Nick Bolton, and Jamin Davis. Rank those 5, then I'll give you my 5, and then we'll wrap up.
All right, yeah, Micah Parsons is in his tier of his own at number 1. No one's touching him for me in this class. I think that he's on his own firmly number 1. Number 2, I have JOK number 2. I have the concerns about how he fits in the NFL, but I think that I found the fit. I think that Jamal Adams role is going to fit him really well. I think a team will take a chance on him. They will put him in that role. I like his fit if he ends up with the Jets with one of their late first-round picks. I like him there. I think that he will fit that role really well. So he's going to be number 2 for me, but it's close. Zavin Collins is just going to be right behind him because I think Zavin Collins is Anthony Barr 2.0. I think he's a really solid, beefy linebacker in the middle who rushes really well off the edge. Now, Nick Bolton, I personally just haven't watched enough to put him ahead of Jamin Davis because I really like Jamin Davis. Maybe I'll watch him and this will change and I'll put Nick Bolton ahead of Jamin Davis. But right now, I am a big fan of Jamin Davis. He's going to be number 4 for me. Again, I love the athleticism. I think that the coverage traits are there. Just got to teach him how to play the game. And I love his vision and play recognition in the running game. He's not a punishing tackler, but he's got all the athleticism, speed to chase people down and make plays in the running game. And then Nick Bolton, like I said, really what I know about him, can shoot the gaps, get in the backfield really well, punishing tackler, but I don't know enough about him to put him ahead of Jamin Davis right now. Eventually I will, and I'll give you guys my rankings at some point, but right now I really like Jamin Davis as my number 4, and Nick Bolton is going to be my number 5.
Yeah, so mine's a little bit different. I'm going Micah Parsons, obviously, at number 1. He's head and shoulders above the rest. But number 2, I'm going Zavin Collins because I like my linebackers a little bigger, a little bit more of thumper style, more of a like gap fillers. But he also has that trait to be a decent off-ball coverage linebacker. You can also rush the passer. So I think I like his diversity. JOK is a little limited to me as a linebacking prospect, so I'm going to go right behind him. I'm going to put JOK behind Zavin Collins because I don't necessarily trust him translating in the run game at the next level because of that size concern. I'm not totally confused by it. I'm not totally down on that category for him, but I will say Nick Bolton for me is behind JOK. And because the reason is because he is a thumper. He's undersized. He's like 5'11", 6 foot, same size as Devin Bush, but he hits, man. He lays the wood. Like, he hits people hard. Like, he makes them see the Lord. So when you're looking at JOK, though, he's not going to do that for the most part. He's not going to meet guys in the gap and rattle their brains. That's not the type of player he is. He can hit them blindsided like he did against the guy against Florida State, but the guy wasn't looking. You know, it's not like he's head to head, like laying him down. So that's kind of why I have JOK behind Zavin Collins, and I have Nick Bolton right behind him. I have Jamin Davis behind all of them at 5 because I just don't know enough about him. I haven't seen enough from him. I haven't seen him excel in pass coverage. I haven't seen him excel as a pass rusher. But I know he's a good run defender. He's just too raw for me to give him a grade that, you know, justifies being over Nick Bolton, who's like a real enforcer, who like it led that defense for Missouri and like really set the stage for, you know, that unit. So that's kind of my rankings. But guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. We had a lot of great information here on all these linebackers. I'll be including some clips throughout so you can enjoy some film as you guys watch. So hope you guys enjoyed. Obviously, thank you, Anthony, for coming back, making the return to Fireside Giants. You know, happy to have you back and talking football once again, my friend.
Of course, very happy to be here. Love Fireside Giants. Thank you all for waiting for me, and I'm happy to be back and, you know, excited to dive back in the comment section, start chatting with you guys, and diving into the Discord. Join that if you haven't already. But yeah, so happy to be back, and, you know, love Fireside Giants. Ready to see what else we got to talk to this week.
Absolutely, yeah. And so we're just finalizing a time to interview Ifedi Odenigbo, rather. New Giant coming over from Minnesota, so we're finalizing that. We'll get that interview up as soon as we do it, obviously, and we'll get all the good stuff out for you. So we got cool player interviews on the way. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure to subscribe below on YouTube, turn on notifications for Apple and Spotify. We'll catch you guys on the next video.
TVSO.